The movie opens with John Goodnight, a circuit judge in the Wyoming Territory, one of the roughest regions in the West. He arrives in the small town of Rollins, where the sheriff greets him warmly and jokes about his poor luck on the trail. As John settles in, his eyes catch a familiar figure, a striking woman passing through town. He follows playfully until she turns, revealing herself as Callie, a former love from Chicago. The reunion brims with teasing banter and old memories. 16 years apart, a broken heart, and lives gone separate ways. Walking together, John shares that he's no longer drifting as a lawyer, but now serves as a circuit judge, tasked with bringing order to lawless towns. Beneath their laughter lingers old affection and the weight of missed chances. Outside her home, Callie admits she's been a widow for nearly 3 years. He quips that he never married because his horse has poor taste in women. Later in the saloon, John joins the sheriff and townsfolk at a card table. Their game is cut short when Deke Spradling and his gang ride in and storm the bank. A tense attempt at a false withdrawal explodes into a violent robbery. Gunfire tears through the street, scattering the card players. John and the sheriff rush out, weapons drawn. The sheriff takes a bullet to the shoulder, but John shoots down one of the outlaws. Deke orders his men to leave their dead behind and flee. John tackles a rider off his horse as the rest disappear into the canyon. Afterward, townsfolk identify the slain bandit as Horace, Deke's brother, confirming the gang has plagued Rollins twice this month. Worse, a local citizen is killed and others injured. The captured youth is revealed as William, a hometown boy gone outlaw. The crowd clamors for his hanging, blaming him for murders in Independence. John silences them, vowing there will be a proper trial. At the jail, he searches William and locks him in a cell. The boy sneers, certain Deke will come to his rescue. John reminds him Deke abandoned even his own brother. Why should William expect different? The youth falls quiet behind the bars. That night, John notices Callie slipping into the sheriff's office. Inside, she's trying to reach the prisoner, her son. The sheriff and John stop her, stunned at the revelation. John never imagined Callie as the mother of an outlaw. Outside, Callie pleads her case. Will was once a good boy, but after her husband died, he drifted toward Deke Spradling and his gang. She insists she tried her best, but a boy in need of a father followed the wrong shadow. To protect her dignity, she told the town Will was away back east. She begs John for mercy. He refuses promises of leniency, offering only what he swore to uphold, a fair trial. At dawn, John takes Will from his cell under guard and stops at a rocky riverbed. Handing him a sledgehammer, he orders him to break stones. Will mocks him, bragging about Deke. John counters with the truth. Deke's legacy is prison yards, chain gangs, and an early grave for anyone who follows. When John steps away to water the horses, he deliberately leaves his gun within reach, knowing Will will grab it. The boy seizes the weapon and holds John at gunpoint, threatening to ride off with both mounts and leave him stranded. Calmly, John asks if he even flipped the safety. With effortless control, he reclaims the gun, snaps the trigger on an empty chamber, and warns, "If you pull a gun on a man, be ready to kill, and make sure it's loaded." They ride back to Rollins, and Will is returned to his cell. Meanwhile, Callie suffers the sting of the town's judgment. Her sewing circle casts her out, neighbors avoid her eyes, and whispers follow her down the street. Soon, anger boils over into a mob outside of her home, chanting for Will's death and eager to take justice into their own hands. John cuts through the chaos. He declares justice will come tomorrow in his courtroom, not by lynch law. When local attorney Lucius tries to stir the crowd, John points out the fresh paint on Breed's shoes, linking him to the vandalism. With the ringleader exposed, the mob scatters. Callie reveals the truth she has hidden for 15 years. Will is John's son. She had been on her way to San Francisco when she discovered she was pregnant, too ashamed to return home without a husband. In Rollins, she married a kind man who promised to raise the boy as his own. John is shaken and tells her she should have given him a chance. Callie answers softly. He would have been miserable, and she couldn't bring herself to burden him. Back in town, John gathers the townsfolk inside a makeshift courtroom. Will is brought in under heavy jeers, the crowd throwing insults and objects until John slams order into the room and swears the boy in. When asked his name, the boy answers William Spradling, not his birth name, but the one he claimed after Deke treated him fair. John strips the illusion away, calling Deke nothing more than a criminal who feeds off the weak. To drive the truth home, he calls on victims in the gallery. Sarah Ann, trembling, stands and recounts how Deke barged into their home, forced her to serve him a meal, then shot her brother dead for sport. Turning back to Will, John presses him on how he joined the gang. Will explains he was promised steady pay at a livery and flattered into feeling he belonged. John digs deeper, pointing out the abandonment of his mother. Will argues he only wanted to spare her. Most men don't want a wife burdened with another man's child. The gallery stirs uneasily. Then, Will blurts out that the man who raised him wasn't his real father. The room freezes as Callie breaks down, apologizing through tears. John steadies the questioning by asking if Will had ever robbed or killed anyone. The boy insists he has not. He can shoot, but poorly, and he hates guns because they spook horses. Most of the time he only tended the gang's mounts. Then, John asks Sarah Ann to look at him closely and say whether he was there the night Deke shot her brother. Shaking her head, she answers no. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. John seizes the moment. He tells the room that he too once lost his family to violence and spent years living only for revenge until someone's kindness pulled him back. Deke may have given Will attention, but he is no savior, and the mob crowding the room doesn't want justice, only blood. John declares that his ruling will come tomorrow and adjourns the court. The townsfolk erupt, demanding a hanging that same day. John fixes his gaze on Counselor Breed, warning that if anyone dies before dawn, it won't be the boy. Then he orders the sheriff to return Will to his cell. Night falls and the sheriff's office is surrounded by a torch-bearing mob, chanting for Will's blood. Inside, John resolves that cutting down the boy won't end the violence. Deke is the root. To stop him, John needs Will as his guide. Callie pleads with him not to take her son, but John insists that lopping off the tail never kills the snake. When she refuses to stand aside, he feigns agreement, then gently locks her in a cell to keep her out of harm's way. He orders the sheriff to guard Callie and hold off the mob. Stepping outside, the sheriff warns the crowd. One more step will be met with gunfire. As the mob rages, John slips out the back with Will, mounts up, and disappears into the night to track Deke Spradling. On the trail, John tests the boy's mettle by leaving his pistol within reach. Calmly he points out that he has more weapons at hand, including a knife, and pulling the trigger would be Will's last mistake. Breaking the silence, Will asks if John knew his mother and if he cared for her. John admits it was in Chicago, 16 years ago, at the State Street Theater, dinners that blossomed into something real. He cared then and still does. At dawn, John wakes to find Will missing, but spots him by the river fishing. Will explains he didn't run because his mother taught him honor. John presses again for Deke's hideout. Will refuses to betray anyone to death. John warns him bluntly. When they arrive, Deke won't hesitate to kill. Elsewhere, Deke and his men swagger into a Scandinavian family's general store. Treating it like his own, Deke robs their jewelry, bullies the owners, then shoots the husband dead before tipping his hat and strolling out. Later, John and Will ride on, sparring lightly about Emerson's writings. Will asks to stop for liniment at a remote shop, unaware it's the same one Deke just wrecked. Inside, the grieving widow mistakes Will for one of the Spradlings and raises her rifle. John steps in, flashes his badge, and coolly talks her down. She swears she saw Will with the gang before, certain he belongs to Deke. John declares the boy is his own son, buying Will's life with that single claim. Outside, a shaken Will asks why he said it. John answers flatly, because she was about to shoot.
Meanwhile, Deke prowls a mining camp and spots a lonely teenager. Playing the part of a fellow orphan, he spins his favorite lie: family, belonging, and easy pay. With a full purse and a slick promise of a horse and a place to belong, he folds another desperate boy into his gang. Elsewhere, guided by Will, John approaches the canyon where the Spradlings are holed up. Will lays out the situation: 8 men in total, but only 2 truly dangerous, Deke and his rifleman Big Mike. Mike is slow-minded, but deadly with a gun. Will points John toward a route with more cover, giving them a chance to scout unseen. Before moving in, John gives Will clear instructions. There's money in the saddlebags. If he doesn't return, take the horses and disappear. Shocked, Will realizes John truly intends to keep his word. John tells him it's time to raise his expectations of people, then clasps the boy's hand before slipping off to work. John scales the watchtower where Big Mike keeps guard. Luring him close, he suddenly drags the man over the edge, sending him crashing to his death. Donning Mike's coat and hat, John strolls into the yard just as Deke emerges from a barn. Recognition flashes. The judge who killed his brother. Guns are drawn. Shots explode and John dives for cover as Deke bolts back inside. John threatens to torch the barn. In answer, Deke throws open the doors, shoving out his so-called boys, 5 frightened youngsters clutching pitchforks. John urges him to stand down, but Deke spits that they're his family. When one boy hesitates, Deke grabs him, pressing a pistol to his back. It's Henry, the newest recruit. Deke demands John disarm. John tosses his weapon away. At that moment, Will appears. Deke grins wide, greeting his son and praising him for delivering the lawman. Playing along, Will pats John down. Quietly, he slips a spare pistol into John's boot while surrendering the obvious knife. But then Will levels a peacemaker at Deke. His hands tremble, his voice full of rage, as he cries that Deke stole his life. He's ready to pull the trigger. John intervenes, stopping him cold. Killing, he warns, doesn't end the pain, it only passes it on. As Will hesitates, John seizes the moment. He disarms Deke, throws aside his own pistol, and takes the fight bare-knuckled. The brawl is vicious. Deke's strength wins the early moments, but John rallies, beating him down until the outlaw lies unconscious. John turns to the boys. Follow Deke and you'll share his fate, or walk away now before the line between life and death closes for good. They return to Rollins with Deke in custody. Will stumbles into Callie's embrace, whispering an apology through tears. John hands Deke over to the sheriff. Deke sneers that dead or jailed makes no difference. Dead is dead. John answers firmly, the difference is justice. Callie steps forward and slaps Deke, 1 strike for every mother who lost a son to him. John then instructs Will to settle the rescued boys at the livery and make sure they are fed. The slick counselor tries to intervene, warning that the boys are outlaws and will surely run, but John cuts him off. There's unfinished business. Right there in the dusty street, he calls court to order. With the bang of his gavel, Rollins itself becomes the bench. He charges the counselor with vandalizing a widow's home during the mob. The men protest there is no proof, until a townsman raises his hand as a witness. Verdict, guilty. Sentence, $50 and reparations. Morning brings new order. John outlines futures for the boys. Telegrams sent to track down kin. Apprenticeships arranged with Union Pacific and Casper. Contracts binding them until they come of age. Any who run will face prosecution. Only Henry is exempted. Hired on the spot by the stable owner to tend her horses and newborn foal. Deputized townsmen stand ready to escort the rest. Before the wagons depart, Callie gathers John and Will for a family photograph. Then John sees him off to San Francisco, the dream she once left behind. He tells Callie that Will no longer belongs to him or her. He belongs to himself now, and he'll make them proud. At the wagon, John presses Emerson's The Conduct of Life into Will's hands, a parting gift of wisdom. Callie and her son roll westward, their dust cloud painted with hope. John mounts up and turns toward the horizon, alone again, burdened by law, shadowed by memory, riding on.
If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button. And if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.